as far as I know, it's the only bird that it's ready to fly. But it can't fly because it's down deep in a big mulch pile. Now, nobody feeds this little bird. Dad doesn't feed the bird. Mommy bird doesn't feed the little baby. They come out of the egg, and then they somehow know, I got to get out of here. So they turn over on their back, and they begin to scrape the sticks and leaves on top of them, and it'll drop down on their chest, and they shake it off their chest, pack it down with their little wings, dig some more, falls down, shake it off, pack it down. It takes up to 3 days for them to dig out of the nest. And nobody told them to do that. Nobody told them to go. Which way? Which way do I go? But how do they know that? You see, well, evolution can't explain those kinds of things, all right? So here it comes. He's out of the nest. Nobody shows it what to eat. He goes off. He knows what to eat. He knows how to catch it and find it. And then the next year, the male bird is going to build a nest. But daddy bird didn't show him how. He starts building a mound all by himself. Nobody showed him how to do it. It's a miracle. It's just a miracle. And so you look at even something like a little Australian incubator bird and you say, how could that evolve? If this story of evolution is true, how could that happen? I say, only God could do that.
Here's something most of us pull out of the icebox every morning.
If you take an egg and you put it in warm water, you will see bubbles coming out. Now, why do you see those bubbles? Well, because there's little holes all through the egg shell, about 10,000 actually in a chicken shell. Those holes are there so that the chick can breathe, because that's where he gets his air, through those holes, so they can get the waste out of the shell, because the chick, as he develops, is going to eat the yolk, and the yolk, as he burns it up, there's waste products, there's water and different things given off, and he has to be able to get the waste out of the shell, or for instance, just the amount of water that's given off, he would drown right there in the shell. How do you explain all the intricate mechanisms and the perfect timing that it takes for an egg to develop, making this whole thing happen? Because every step of the way, the chick would be dead. Everything has to be done on a particular day and in a particular order, and the timing has to be exactly right, or you have a dead chick. If you have ever boiled an egg or eaten a hard-boiled egg, you'll notice when you peel the egg, there's like that little membrane in there, and that membrane has to be there. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But on one end of the egg, it's flat. And it looks like the chicken didn't quite fill the egg. Well, that's a special place. That's called the air sac. And so now we take all these parts and we put them together and we have this little fertilized egg, and now this little chick is developing. By the 5th day, its little heart is pumping. Blood vessels have grown out of the chick. 2 of them go up, hook into the membrane. And those are the ones that it's going to breathe through. It'll get its air through that. The air comes through the pores or the holes in the shell up to the membrane, and then the membrane transfers the oxygen to the artery, the vein that goes into the chick. And then the other vessel that hooks into that gets rid of the waste. And so there's a process there of things coming in and things going out of the shell. 2 more blood vessels hook into the yolk, and that's the way the chick eats. And as he lives in this shell, he begins to get to where he's too big and he can't get enough air, and it's now the 19th day. Now, during this time, he has grown a little tooth on top of his beak. It's called the egg tooth. Now, most of us grow our teeth inside our mouth, not on our beak, but the little chick has this little egg tooth. And on the 19th day, he takes that and he pokes a little hole into that flat end of the egg where the air is. That's called the air sac. And now he has 6 hours to breathe. Now, if we're swimming and we're on the bottom of the swimming pool and we've run out of air and we get up to the top and I just made it. We usually just sit there and lean there and get some good air and breathe a while. Well, not the chick, because if he got into that air sac, I mean, he's going, I can't get enough air, and he pecks into that on the 19th day, not 1 day sooner or 1 day later or it's dead. It's the 19th day, goes into that sac. Now he's got 6 hours. Now, is he going to just sit there and breathe that air, or is he going to say, I need to do something else with this air, which is what he says. I've got to get a little hole and use this 6 hours of air. I got 6 hours to peck a little hole through the shell. And now he breathes from the 19th to the 21st day through this little hole in the shell. On the 21st day, that's the day he breaks out of the shell. Now, in the meantime, the systems that hook into the membrane and the systems that hook into the yolk, all of those little vessels, they begin to disattach or deattach themselves. And when he comes out of the shell, sometimes he might have a blood vessel hanging on him somewhere or something like that. But the fact is These things, it's like he's dropped his space suit off, and he is ready to go. And so he comes out of that shell on the 21st day, but every single step along the way had to have perfect timing. It had to be done exactly right. And when he comes out, he's a discrete entity. There's no mistake. This is a chick. All we see in all of nature, in the fossil record and in living creatures, is just discrete, identifiable. We can label them. That's a cow. That's a chicken. And so I think that's more evidence that God made everything, including little chicks, just exactly like they are.
Wow. Breakfast is not going to look the same. Did you know in an official test at the University of Missouri, chicken number 2988 laid 371 of these things in just a year? That's a lot of eggs. You know there are animals that breathe air. However, they seem more at home in the water. Take the beaver, for instance.
The beaver is amazing because it's an engineer. They build their beaver dams with engineering skill. As a matter of fact, engineers study beaver dams to see how to build strength into a dam and to see how to channel water. It's like the beaver knows all this. And so our engineers go to college and then they study what the beaver. It's like the brain surgeons studying the woodpecker. It's like God gave us examples in his creation of how to do things right. Well, anyway, a beaver builds his house, and he usually has a couple of entrances coming in under the water, and he makes his house in such a way that the bad gases that build up in there can escape. Oxygen can come in, but he builds it in such a way that it will stay dry in there. And so they can have little baby beavers in there, and they have a nice, dry, clean place to be. He will store food in the bottom of the stream or the river, and that means he has to be underwater frequently. Well, in the winter, where most beavers live, it gets very cold. Has God made a provision for that? Oh, yes, he sure has. A beaver goes underwater. He has like transparent eyelids, water goggles. And he can see through his eyelids under the water, and that's to keep the dirt out of his eyes that's floating around. He has nose flaps that close, keeps the water out of his nose, ear flaps that close, keeps the water out of his ears. He has a special thing that I like. He has fur-lined flaps in the back of his mouth that cover his throat and his molars, his big teeth in the back. Now, his front teeth, they must not be sensitive, because those are the ones that he uses to chew down and chew through the trees, and they wear down, and they keep growing, and he'll wear them off, they keep growing, and so they must not be sensitive, but his back teeth are. And so God made him little fur-lined flaps to protect them from the cold ice water in the wintertime. And then you think about the way a beaver swims, and he can take a branch that has a load, a drag on it, and he can swim across even a stream with a current, and he wants to come over here, but he's over here, and there's a current, and he's dragging a branch, and he can go right straight across there. He'll compensate. So he's making mathematical calculations, and he is figuring out what kind of rudder action he needs with his tail to compensate for the drag and for the current in the stream, and he gets to where he wants to go every single time. I don't think evolution has an explanation for that, but I think my God does. Another animal is the duck-billed platypus. And this animal is fascinating. It's similar to a beaver in that it spends a lot of its time in water, has webbed feet, and lays eggs. Kind of strange for a mammal. But anyway, the thing that is fascinating is the way it finds its food. A platypus eats little tiny shrimp that it finds under the water. But when it goes in the water, unlike the beaver, which has clear eyelids, the platypus closes his eyes. He has nose flaps that close, so he's not seeing anything, he's not smelling anything. So how does he find the shrimp? He has inside of himself a mechanism that detects the electrical impulses in the tail of the shrimp between the muscle and the nerve. When the nerve sends an impulse to the muscle, there's a tiny little electrical impulse, and the platypus reads that electrical impulse, and that is what leads it to its food. They have done experiments where they have put dead shrimp in a tank with flashlight batteries, and the platypus will go to the flashlight battery because there's an electrical current there. So he finds his food by reading the electrical currents, those tiny little electrical currents. That's a miracle, absolute miracle.